Well, Happy New Year. We've made it to 2025. I want to kick this year off with my top five predictions for 2025 for the Austin metro area. If you came to look for fancy graphics and editing, you are definitely following the wrong person. I am rudimentary. This is Canva. I whipped this together like in an hour. Let's get rocking. All right. So we're going to start with prediction number one. I think interest rates are going to stay above 6% this year. And I know that's not what most people want to hear. But if we look at where rates are today, we're kicking off the year. We are still, again, this is the par rate over 7%. 30-year fixed rate's about 7.1%. If you're a primary home buyer right now, you're probably getting a higher six, maybe a 6.5 to 6.9 rate on your mortgage. So you're getting a six. But generally, we have been watching this for a while. If I go down to the last full year, so this chart is all of 2024 and the first few days of 2025. The line across the middle is 7%. So if we go back to the beginning of last year, we were about 6.75 to kick off the year. There was a lot of belief that rates were going to be coming down and the Fed was going to do all these cuts in 2024. And what happened? Rates shot up to like 7.5 right when we got to the hot spring market, and it kind of cooled off the market. It was like a pail of cold water on buyers, and it cooled off the market. Yet rates, trickled their way down as we got into the early fall. Why? Because there was the assumption that the Fed was finally going to start cutting rates. Guess what? They did. And since then, September through December, they've cut their rate about 1% But what's happened since they made their first announcement? Interest rates on the mortgage have shot up basically a full percent. Why? Because of the bond market. The bond market, I've been saying this almost every week. Watch the 10-year treasury. Look, there's still inflation in the market. You're feeling it. You're seeing it. I can't believe what I had to pay for dinner last night just for some tacos. Inflation is real. And so that puts pressure on things. That means the government is going to have to fund a bigger budget. And that means you got to print more bonds. If you put more supply out there, you need more demand. And if demand isn't there, they're going to want a higher rate to invest in those bonds. So watch that. I think that's going to be a story for this year, is maybe surprising people. I know there's a lot of talk that rates will come down. I hope they do. It would definitely help us in our business. But my prediction is we will see rates stay at or above 6%, if not all of this year, at least for the vast majority of this year. So keep an eye on that. Number two, I think our prices have bottomed. So we have had an unprecedented last 5 years. If you go back to 2019, we'll call that the normal market. In 2019, Austin was still appreciating pretty handily. We went up 6 or 8% that year. It was a solid year for sales, kind of a balanced market. It was a seller's market, but it wasn't crazy like the pandemic. Of course, we had the pandemic. The market went up almost double in that time. And then, of course, we spent all of 2022, the back half, really dropping. 2023 was kind of stagnant, 2024, but every year was less dramatic in how it came down. So let's look at November data. So this came out just last week. So this is looking at sales in November. Our median sales price was up 2024 over 2023. Not a lot, couple percent, but still our median sales price, even with high rates, and rates were going up in November, not down. They were coming up from that 6.1 up to about 7. But we still had buyers, and they were still overall, as a market, not individual homes, but as a market, median sales price went up a little bit. Closed sales was up. Pendings were up 16%. So what we were seeing is activity, buyer activity is starting to come back to the market. It hasn't fully been reflected in prices yet. Why? Because the fall is typically a really slow time of year for sales anyway. You had an election, you had rates going all over the place. There was a lot of uncertainty. You weren't sure who was going to win the election. So there was a lot of uncertainty. A lot of buyers have waited. We had an open house this weekend that I hosted at one of my listings. We had almost 40 people show up. We got 2 offers this weekend, first weekend on the market. And a lot of people were kind of surprised. Everybody I talked to was like, well, we were waiting until, and they all had an answer. Well, now they're not waiting anymore. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more buyers coming to the market. We still have plenty of inventory. So I'm not expecting, pandemic type sales, but be prepared. I wouldn't be surprised if our median home values after this pandemic adjustment, once we look back, I think we will have seen the bottom on those prices. Number three, I think Austin's going to remain a top 10 in the US growing metro. And again, some people have seen headlines, oh, Austin is slowing down. Oh, people are leaving. Don't get confused. There are two ways to think about Austin. You got the city limits, and then you got the metro. Okay. There was one story that came out from CNBC about a year ago, and it said Austin was shrinking. And by the way, if you dig into their story, it shrunk by like 100 people. So basically, the story in a nutshell is everybody's going to the suburbs. Okay. So they're not leaving. They're not all going back to California or wherever they came from. Yes, there are some people moving, but check this out. U-Haul just came out with this story this week. Austin Metro is still, as of last year, ranked number 5 for one-way moves in 2024. Those are coming in. So again, Metro, we are still booming. People are still moving here. What really slowed Austin down on price is the fact that so did all the money during the pandemic. We've built more apartments per capita than almost any city in the US. We are still building, unlike a lot of cities in the US, we are still building single family homes and homes for families. And so Austin is trying to keep up with that growth. And at least when demand slowed down, we've done a good job with that. And that's one of the reasons you've seen the prices correct, is because we've had plenty of inventory for people to buy. So keep an eye on that. I predict Austin will still, in 2025, remain a top 10 metro for people moving here. All right. If I go to my fourth prediction, I think we're going to appreciate this year. I'm not saying crazy. I don't care if it's 1%. But again, this ties in with number 2. Not only have our prices bottomed, I think by the end of the year, we're going to see the market go up, even if rates don't drop. I think at this point, and again, I've been involved in sales before the pandemic, through the pandemic, during this correction phase every month with buyers and sellers. And I can tell you, I feel the conversations changing. I feel the pent up demand. I know what people have been saying, what they're waiting for. Everybody's always waiting for something. They're starting to run out of excuses of what they're waiting for. So, of course, everybody would like lower rates. But at some point, you got to have a house too. And you don't want to be the last to the table after the home goes up another 50 or 100 grand. So I have a feeling we're going to see more buyer demand than we've seen the last 2.5 years. And that's going to help the market kind of turn the corner and start to appreciate in 2025. Oh, and tying in with that, this is from Realtor.com. Top housing markets for 2025. They use the word soar. I think that's a little generous. But again, Austin was put on their list. I'll scroll down: Colorado Springs, Miami, Virginia Beach, Richmond, McAllen. But when we get down to number 11 or 12, where are we? We're in here somewhere. Hang on, 16. But anyways, they're predicting an increase in existing home sales, not new builds, of 14.5%. That's not the appreciation rate. That's the growth in sales, the actual number of closed sales. I would not disagree. I think our metro, again, this ties in with what I've been saying. I think the market is going to start to feel buyer demand come back. I think it's going to surprise some people who are, I talked to several people at the open house. They all think the market is just now starting to correct because they've been reading the media who's behind. And they also are hoping, I think, that the market will keep correcting so that they can buy a house at a cheaper price. I think there's going to be some people surprised when they start to see the market turn a corner and start to go back up in value. So keep an eye on that. And finally, I think the suburbs are going to steal the headlines over Austin. What do I mean by that? So if we look at, I shared this story a couple weeks ago. This is just Williamson County, one of our counties to the north, but it has a lot of cities in Williamson County. This is the growth rate just between 2020 and 2023. Okay, so we're talking just 3 years. Elgin went up 27%, Georgetown 42%, Jarrell, which some of these are smaller towns, but Jarrell grew 127%, Liberty Hill 185%. Even some of the bigger markets like Round Rock, which already has well over 100,000 people, it grew almost 9% in 3 years. That is a lot of growth. So what's happening with these markets is they're going to start getting more and more headlines. Bastrop County is working to lure $1 billion data center project. I saw a story the other day that Everybody wants a Costco. Well, here we go. Little tiny Liberty Hill, which I promise you 10 years ago was a blinking yellow light on Highway 29. They're luring a Costco. Costco does not go to tiny markets. So they're predicting how much growth is coming to these areas. You're going to see stories about HEB, Costco, Trader Joe's is coming to Cedar Park. Kyle got one last year. HEB's going out to Manor. The grocers, the big food providers are typically some of the last big commercial developments that come out to support residential real estate. When they start making those announcements, that tells you they've got enough people out there. You'll see more commercial stories as well. Obviously, Samsung is still building their big chip factory out in Taylor, but I think we're going to see more and more and more of those types of projects going to the suburbs, so pay attention to that. All right, finally, let's talk about right now. So those are my 5 predictions for 2025. I'll share them again right at the end if you want to look at them. This is number of active versus sold listings right now in the market, and this is typically the low point every year. So they already cut January off, but if we go back to February last year, we had about 9,400 single family homes for sale in the metro. If we start right now, we're about 9,600. So it could level off or drop. We're maybe just a hair higher than we were last year. But if the pace of sales, if the number of units sold can climb a little bit this year, I wouldn't be surprised if our inventory stays the same or drops this year compared to last year. So one more prediction, keep an eye on that. Of course, if you are or know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in Austin, definitely let us know. And of course, hey, I would love your feedback on these predictions. Let me know what you think. Do you think I'm way off base? Do you think I'm spot on the money? Or do you have your own predictions? Hey, leave them in the comments below. Would love to read those. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the holidays, had a great new year. Are looking forward to getting the kids back in school this week. And I look forward to talking with you next Monday. Thanks.